I thought the worst thing that could happen to me already had. Then my phone buzzed. Lena had just fallen asleep on my chest when the screen lit up on the nightstand. I shifted carefully so I wouldn't wake her, her soft breath warm against my collarbone, and reached for the phone, already bracing myself for another useless text from Mom. Maybe another reminder about feeding schedules or some Scandinavian article on mindful parenting. But this wasn't that. We're moving to Lisbon. I emptied the account. Good luck. 6 words. That was it. 6 words that cracked the air open and left me hollow. For a full minute, I didn't move. My brain went quiet, then frantic. When I opened the family banking app, my hands trembled so badly I almost dropped the phone. Balance, $0. 0. It was gone. All of it. The fund we'd built together, me, Mom, Dad, and my sister Bree, our so-called safety net. The same one that helped after Bree's last hospital stay, the one they swore would always be there, just in case. They didn't leave a forwarding address. Not even a goodbye. Lena stirred, her tiny fingers curling near my neck, trusting, unaware that 2 people she'd never remember had just rewritten her life. I kissed her forehead and whispered into the still air of my apartment in Astoria, Oregon, "Thanks for the warning." They hadn't even waited until the weekend ended. I was supposed to watch Bree's baby for a few days while she rested after her latest emotional collapse in Berlin. No one said it was permanent. No one said I'd be raising her daughter alone. The truth hit like a slow, sinking tide. I shouldn't have been surprised. Being the reliable one doesn't happen in one moment. It builds quietly, like moss on your skin. You don't even notice the weight until you can't breathe. It started with small things. Picking up Bree from her painting classes because Mom was on a work call. Folding Dad's shirts because Bree forgot. Then watching her forgetfulness turn into a family joke. I used to think I was helping. That being dependable made me valuable. But dependable turned into invisible. Bree was fire and noise, always crying in parking lots, writing poems on receipts, changing majors like hairstyles. My parents adored her chaos. They called it artistry. I was the shelf that held her pieces together. That shelf just cracked. Now, they'd left me holding her child, their money, their mess, all gone. Lisbon. Like it was some beautiful spiritual reset, not an escape hatch. For 2 days, I went through the motions. I barely slept, learned to function in tower fragments. Lena's cries blurred into the hum of the refrigerator, the clink of bottles, the sting of exhaustion. Every feeding was a negotiation, every diaper a small war. I edited articles for a regional history journal in flashes while she napped beside my laptop, her breathing like fragile wind. Friends sent check-ins, texts, memes, digital concern. No one came. By the 4th night, I was pacing the living room at 3 a.m., Lena strapped to my chest, both of us half crying. The apartment smelled of cold coffee and baby powder. When dawn bled in through the blinds, I opened the door to get the mail and froze. There, on the stoop, sat a small plastic container, still warm. Inside, homemade soup. A note in looping cursive. "You're doing more than enough." Across the hall, Mrs. Alvarez's curtains moved slightly. We'd only spoken once, about trash pickup. That afternoon, she knocked again, wordless, holding a folded quilt. "I made it for the wrong-sized bed," she said simply. I thanked her. She didn't ask to come in. She didn't stay. But it was the first time in days that someone saw me. That night, I ate soup one-handed while holding Lena in the other arm. She smiled mid-spoon. The next morning, I drove to my parents' house. I told myself it was just to grab the last can of formula or maybe find an old bassinet. But I knew what. Their house smelled like lemon polish and lies. Every cab. Then, at the back of a drawer, under piles of junk mail, I found a worn blue folder labeled Portugal. Inside, flight itineraries, an apartment lease dated 6 months ago, prepaid SIM cards. It wasn't spontaneous. It was planned. They'd been preparing to vanish long before Bree's breakdown. And behind the papers, something worse, a notarized document with my name, my address, my forged signature. Power of attorney. Transferring full guardianship of Lena Bree to me. No conversation. No consent. No choice. I stood in that too-clean kitchen, holding the proof that my parents hadn't left by accident. They had traded me for their freedom. Lena shifted against my chest, and I whispered into the quiet. Okay then. I guess it's just us now. Outside, the morning fog pressed against the windows. Inside, I finally stopped shaking. Not because I felt strong, but because the fear had turned into something colder. Something that felt a lot like resolve. By the end of that week, I had a lawyer, a spreadsheet, and a plan. What I didn't have was sleep or mercy. I'd never needed an attorney before. The only time I'd been inside a law office was to notarize a lease, and I remember the pen running out of ink halfway through my name. This time, my hand didn't even shake. The lawyer's name was Eli Parker, a quiet man who looked like he'd been built from caution and decaf coffee. He read the papers I'd brought, the power of attorney, the fake signature, and sighed like someone who'd seen too many families implode in the same polite way. This is fraud, he said simply. I know, I replied. They can't just assign you a child. They already did. He rubbed his temples. Legally, you're her guardian. Undoing it will take time. But if you wanted to fight it, I'd need to know whether you intend to return her. I looked at Lena, asleep in her carrier on the office floor, one tiny sock half off her foot. The idea of giving her back, to what exactly? Made something primal flare in my chest. She's staying with me, I said quietly. Eli nodded once, like that answer told him everything. He gave me a folder, pages thick with forms and instructions. I signed where he pointed. I didn't cry. I didn't even breathe properly. I just moved my pen like someone performing CPR on paper. When I left his office, the ocean wind hit me so hard I almost laughed. Astoria always smells like salt and rust, like everything here has a memory it's trying to forget. I strapped Lena into her seat, turned on the engine, and stared at the steering wheel until the sound of her soft cooing pulled me back. Yeah, I whispered. We'll be fine. The days became a blur of formula stains, emails, and late-night panic. I turned into someone who measured time by naps and court deadlines. Mrs. Alvarez kept leaving small kindnesses at my door, a thermos of tea, a crocheted hat for Lena, once even a handwritten grocery list titled, Things That Keep Babies from Crying. She'd been right about the tea at least. At night, when the apartment went quiet, I replayed everything. The forged signature. The 6-word text. The way my parents' house had felt so intentionally empty, as if they'd been rehearsing their disappearance. Had I missed the signs? Of course I had. I'd been too busy being useful. Bree used to call me the anchor. She'd say it like it was a compliment, but what she meant was, you sink so the rest of us can drift. 3 weeks after I found the documents, I received a letter from Lisbon. No return address, just an international stamp and my name written in my mother's thin, controlled handwriting. Maya, we did what we had to. You're stronger than you think. Take care of Lena the way we couldn't take care of Bree. We're not coming back. Please don't try to find us. Mom. I sat on the floor, letter trembling in my hand. There wasn't even an apology. Just an assignment. Another task handed down like family tradition. I wanted to burn it, but I couldn't. So I folded it neatly and slid it into the same folder as the forged papers, a file of proof that love doesn't always look like protection. Sometimes it's just control dressed in concern. That night, I took Lena for a walk by the docks. The wind smelled of rain and old wood, and the gulls screamed like something ancient. She reached for my hair, laughing, and I thought, maybe she'll never know what was taken from her. Maybe that's mercy. Then my phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. We know where she is. Let's talk. I froze. The screen glowed pale in the mist. My pulse hammered in my throat. The message had no name, no number I recognized, but the phrasing, we know where she is, hit me like a threat. I looked around instinctively. A man in a hooded jacket leaned by the pier railing, staring out at the water. Another stood near the parked cars, phone in hand. Maybe coincidence. Maybe not. But after what my family had done, coincidence no longer existed. I pushed the stroller faster, heart in my mouth, until we reached the car. My hands shook so badly I dropped the keys twice before getting inside. Once the doors locked, I sat there for a long minute, breathing hard, whispering, "You're okay. You're okay. You're okay." The phone buzzed again. Same number. Another message. "You don't know the full story. Bree's not dead." Everything inside me went still. The world narrowed to the blue light of the screen, to the reflection of my own terrified face staring back. Not dead. But I'd seen the photos. I'd seen the urn at the memorial. Had my parents lied about that too? Lena stirred in the back seat, her cries small and raw. I started the car and drove, headlights cutting through fog, my mind spinning through every impossible version of truth. If Bree was alive, then all of this, the guardianship, the disappearance, the forged signature, was part of something far more deliberate. The rain started to fall, soft and relentless, as if the whole town was whispering secrets I wasn't ready to hear. That night, I sat by the window with Lena asleep in her crib, watching the reflection of the rain crawl down the glass. I didn't answer the text, but I saved the number. I didn't call Eli. I didn't call the police. I just whispered to the quiet room, "If she's alive, she's going to tell me herself." Outside, the storm deepened, and somewhere in the dark, a ship's horn wailed low and mournful, like it knew what was coming. The next morning, I called the number. I shouldn't have. But curiosity and grief sound the same when you're lonely. It rang twice before a voice answered, low, male, steady. "Maya? Who is this?" I asked. "My name's Alex. I was a friend of your sister's." My mouth went dry. "Bree's dead." A pause, a faint sound of traffic in the background. "That's what they told you." I didn't say anything. The silence stretched, heavy and alive. "Listen," he continued. "She reached out to me a few months ago, before she disappeared. She said she was scared. Said your parents were hiding something about the money." I gripped the phone tighter. "What kind of something?" "Offshore accounts. Shell names. A transfer she didn't understand. She thought they were planning to vanish." I swallowed hard. "And you think she's alive?" "I don't think." "I know. I got a voicemail from her last week." He sent me the audio file before I could respond. I pressed play with shaking hands. The voice was faint, distorted by static, but unmistakable. "Alex, if anything happens, tell Maya they took everything. Tell her." The line cut off with a sharp crackle. I sat frozen, staring at nothing. Bree's voice had always carried this half-laugh, half-sob sound, like she was about to break or bloom. It was still there. Still her. "Where are you?" I whispered. "Portland. I can meet you tomorrow. But be careful, Maya. If your parents faked her death, they're not just running from guilt. They're running from someone else." That night, I barely slept. Every sound in the apartment felt amplified, the hum of the fridge, the creak of the floorboards, Lena's soft breathing. I sat by her crib, watching her tiny chest rise and fall, and wondered what kind of world I'd dragged her into. By dawn, I'd made my decision. Mrs. Alvarez knocked as I was packing a small overnight bag. "Leaving town?" she asked gently. "Just for a day." She looked at Lena in my arms and nodded slowly. "Then take this." She handed me a small silver cross. "For protection. Even if you don't believe in it." "I don't," I said. "I know," she smiled. "That's why you need it." The drive to Portland felt like crossing into another life. The highway unfurled beneath the gray morning sky, and my reflection in the rearview looked older than I remembered. Lena slept through most of it, her little face turned toward the sunlight. When I reached the coffee shop Alex had chosen, an old brick place near the river, he was already there. Tall, dark hair tied back, eyes that looked like they hadn't rested in weeks. He stood as I approached, his expression cautious but kind. "You look like her," he said quietly. "Everyone says that," I replied. We sat, and for a moment, neither of us spoke. The air smelled of espresso and rain. He slid a folder across the table. Inside were printouts, bank records, dated months before my parents' move. Transfers to Lisbon, Zurich, then Dubai. All from accounts under my father's name and Bree's. Except, Bree had never worked a day in her life. "They used her identity," I whispered. "Yeah. And when she found out, she confronted them." He paused. "That's when she vanished." My chest tightened. Do you think they hurt her? Alex looked away. I think they silenced her. I felt sick. The world blurred around the edges, the clatter of cups, the hiss of the milk steamer, someone laughing too loudly at the next table. All of it too normal, too cruel. Why tell me now? I asked. Because you're the only one they didn't erase, he said. And because she wanted you to finish what she started. We drove to his apartment on the east side, small, cluttered, the kind of place that smelled like burnt coffee and lost sleep. He showed me a photo on his laptop, Bree at a train station, taken 3 weeks after the supposed date of her death. She looked thinner, hollow-eyed, wearing a hoodie I didn't recognize. That's her, I breathed. Taken by a private investigator in Spain. He was tracking your parents for someone else. I found it online in a hidden forum tied to their accounts. The realization hit me slowly, like stepping into cold water. They're laundering money. Among other things, he said grimly. And if Bree knew, she became a liability. Lena started to fuss in her stroller. I picked her up, bouncing her gently, and for a strange moment I thought I saw Bree's eyes in hers. The same restless spark, the same quiet defiance. Alex watched us, then asked, "Do you trust me?" I didn't answer. Trust was currency I no longer owned. That evening, I checked into a motel on the city's edge. The wallpaper peeled near the window, and the neon sign outside flickered vodka CY. I sat on the bed, holding Lena, scrolling through the photos again and again. Each one felt like a new betrayal. A new truth pretending to be mercy. At midnight, someone knocked on the door. 3 sharp knocks. Then silence. I froze. My heart slammed against my ribs. Who's there? No answer. I checked the peephole, nothing but rain and shadow. When I opened the door a few inches, an envelope slid through the gap, landing at my feet. No one was in the hallway. Inside was a single sheet of paper, handwritten, trembling ink. Stop looking for her. She's safer where she is. At the bottom, a small drawing of a sun, Bree's old signature doodle. I didn't sleep after that. I sat by the window till dawn, the letter beside me, my mind torn between relief and dread. If Bree had written that, it meant she was alive. But if she hadn't, someone wanted me to believe she was. When the sun finally rose, painting the cracked blinds in gold, I whispered to Lena, "We're not running anymore." She smiled in her sleep, small, innocent, unaware of the storm gathering outside. Because that morning, I made a decision I couldn't undo. I was going to find Bree, even if it meant following the same road that made her disappear. 2 days later, I found the address. A farmhouse outside Lisbon. And a name on the lease, not my parents'. Hers. It didn't feel real until I saw it on the screen. Bree's name, in neat black print, attached to a rental contract dated 3 months ago. Not a grave. Not a memory. A lease. I booked the ticket before I could talk myself out of it. The flight to Lisbon felt endless, like being trapped between lives. Lena slept most of the way, her tiny face pressed against my shoulder, while I stared out the window at the thinning clouds and wondered if I was making the same mistake Bree did, chasing ghosts across continents. When the plane descended over the sea, I almost cried. Portugal looked soft from above, terracotta roofs, olive trees, the world washed in warm gold. It didn't match the fear in my chest. The farmhouse was an hour outside the city, hidden among rolling hills and dry vineyards. The dirt road curved endlessly, until the house appeared like a secret that didn't want to be found. White walls. Green shutters. A single rusted mailbox marked B. Hale. Her name. I parked the car and sat still for a full minute. The air smelled of citrus and dust. The silence felt heavy, like the earth was holding its breath. Then I heard it, faint music, drifting through the open window. Piano. My heart nearly stopped. I carried Lena up the narrow path, my legs shaking with every step. At the door, I hesitated. Then I knocked. The music stopped. A long moment passed before the door opened. And there she was. Bree. Alive. Thinner, paler, her hair cropped short, but her eyes, those same wild, restless eyes, staring right into mine. For a second, neither of us breathed. "Maya," she whispered. "You're alive." I told them not to tell you, she said softly. You weren't supposed to come. My knees nearly gave out. You let me think you were dead. It was the only way to keep you safe. Safe. That word again, the one people use before they break you. Inside, the farmhouse was sparse, but lived in. Stacks of papers, a map of Europe covered in red pins, an open laptop. The air smelled faintly of paint thinner and coffee. She poured water into a glass, hands trembling. Mom and Dad were into something bigger than money, she said. The transfers were just noise. They were hiding data, names, offshore files, evidence. I stumbled into it by accident. So they faked your death? They helped me disappear. There were people looking for me, Maya. Dangerous people. I felt dizzy. So you left me to clean it up? To raise your child while you played spy in the countryside? Her voice cracked. It wasn't supposed to last. I thought once they were gone, I'd come back for her. But they vanished too soon. I didn't have time. Lena stirred in my arms, and Bree looked at her like she'd seen sunlight for the first time in years. Her lips quivered, her eyes filled with tears. She's so big, she whispered. Does she know me? No, I said quietly. She only knows me. The silence that followed felt endless. Finally, Bree whispered, you were always the strong one. I almost laughed. No, I was the leftover. We talked for hours, trading fragments of truth like fragile glass. She told me about the night she disappeared, how someone had broken into her apartment in Berlin, how Dad had shown up 2 hours later with a fake ID and a plane ticket. He said it was temporary, she murmured. He said they'd fix everything. Where are they now? I asked. Her eyes flickered. Gone. The people they were working for didn't forgive mistakes. I've been off-grid ever since. The words landed like a stone in my chest. Gone. Not vanished. Not hiding. Gone. Bree reached for my hand. You shouldn't have come. I pulled away. You shouldn't have left. That night, after Lena fell asleep on the couch, Bree showed me her laptop folders, encrypted files, names of companies, foundations, shell accounts. Proof of everything our parents had done. I was going to send it to a journalist, she said. But if I do, they'll find me. And maybe you. Then don't send it, I said. We'll find another way. There's no other way. She looked at me then, really looked the way she used to when we were kids sneaking out to the roof, sharing secrets under the stars. You can still walk away, she said. Take Lena. Forget all of this. You know I can't. I know, she whispered. That's what I hate about you. The next morning, I woke to an empty house. Bree's clothes were gone. So was the laptop. On the table, a note. Tell Lena I love her. Tell her I tried. Don't come looking this time. Outside, the vineyard shimmered in the rising heat. Somewhere far away, a car engine started. And then, nothing. I stood there, holding the note, the air thick with silence, realizing she'd chosen her ending again, this time for good. When I returned to Oregon weeks later, I filed the documents with Eli. He looked at the evidence, at the forged signatures and foreign accounts, and said quietly, You know this could expose everything. Good, I said. Let it. He studied me for a moment, then nodded. And Bree? I hesitated. She's gone. But maybe this time, by choice. Months passed. The investigation made headlines for a while: offshore fraud, anonymous whistleblowers, a missing daughter tied to the case. No one ever said her name. But I didn't need them to. Every night, after putting Lena to bed, I sit by the window and play the same piece of piano music Bree used to love. The sound fills the apartment, soft, broken, beautiful. Sometimes I think I hear her in it, that half-laugh, half-cry voice, whispering somewhere between the notes. I whisper back, I found you. And for the first time in years, it doesn't sound like a lie.